Ready?
I'm ready.
Born ready. I know Steve's ready. He's
Steve's
a
ready.
Lifeonaire coach. He's
That's right.
always ready.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Filling the Storehouse podcast, and I'm Stu. That's David, and we have a pretty amazing guest today. We're really excited about it. Steve Cook, thank you for joining us.
Glad
Uh,
to be here.
if you haven't read his book, we're going to talk a lot about it today. It has made a huge impact on David and I, and we're gonna get into it. But first, Steve, if you could just kind of give our audience just a little bit of background of who you are and kind of how you came to be where you are now.
Oh, I guess I could go all the way back to I'm a kid, but I'll bore everybody with that. So, in my professional world, where people know of me or know who I am, it just goes back to my beginning days as a real estate investor flipper. I started flipping houses in the Baltimore, Maryland area back in 1998, and started educating people, teaching people how to flip and rehab houses and all different kinds of real estate investing. And, that eventually was something that developed into a coaching business. I never had plans of being on the educational side of the business. It just sort of morphed into that with the success that I was having as a flipper. Many people were seeking me out and asking me to teach them how to do the same. But eventually, I got more interested in helping and teaching those same successful real estate investors how to live and experience a better life, and not necessarily how to make more money and do more deals. And that just came from observations, watching people who were building successful businesses, but the good life that's supposed to come along with that wasn't following. And I knew that there had to be something wrong. And eventually that's where Lifeonaire was birthed out of. And, Lifeonaire is sort of like a millionaire or billionaire who has a lot of money. Lifeonaire is somebody who lives and experiences an abundant life.
No, that's incredible. And one of the big things, and we talked about this previously, and anybody who reads your book or listens to any podcast that you're a guest on really quickly realizes that, just like for Stu and I in Storehouse 310, faith is a huge part of your why and the motivation behind everything that you do. And if you don't mind, I would love for you to share uh, some of the story you shared with us previously about kind of what, that huge turning point in your life. I just thought it was a really cool story and give some context to what is shaping, the book and just your perspective.
Well, my coming to know Jesus story was one that was a very radical change. I had a pretty radical change in my life. My parents were divorced when I was only 4 years old. I didn't have a father in my life, and I was raised by a single mother with two brothers. So she was raising three of us by herself, and it wasn't easy. Life was pretty hard for us. I do recall as we were growing up that after she paid the bills, we had $11 left every week for groceries, and it. I'm old, but not that old. $11 didn't go far,
Yeah.
and you couldn't buy a whole lot with that. But the common theme that was always talked about in our house was that life would be easier if we just had more money. And so, I look back and how much that conditioned me, that I just always thought if I just had more money, life would be better. And I grew up with the entrepreneurial spirit that I was going to go out there, I was going to get rich, and I was never going to have to struggle. My kids would never have to struggle because I was going to do, all the right things, was sort of the way that I thought things would happen. And I failed in a number of different businesses before I actually came across real estate investing. My last failure was with a restaurant and bar, and when I came out of there, I was deep in debt. I had absolutely no income. I had nothing in the bank. I had collection agencies chasing me all the time. My credit was completely shot, and I was just trying to figure out, what am I going to do. You know, I'm at the worst point I've ever been in, and how am I going to start to make a living? And one of the things that I used to actually buy my restaurants. That was the second restaurant I had owned. But what I used was creative real estate investing techniques, because I had always wanted to be a real estate investor. That was what was intriguing to me. But I found ways to actually buy businesses or restaurants with them. And I found out that I wasn't buying an investment. I wasn't even buying a business. I tell people that I bought 2 jobs, and I was lucky if I could get paid for one. And that's the way the restaurant business treated me. But it was a hard business. It was a very hard business. I was working 90 hours a week, and could only pay myself, very little on occasion. I couldn't even pay myself too much. So I started pursuing real estate investing, and got into the business. About 8 months of trying to figure out how to do it. Finally, the light bulb went off one day, and I got my first deal. And when I say the light bulb went off, I mean, it was just an aha moment. All of a sudden, I got it, and I never looked back from that point forward. I started buying a house every week, and I was doing it for the money. I just wanted to get rich. And, growing up in a household where I didn't have a father, I was left to figure out how to be a man on my own. And, I was growing up with the MTV culture, and MTV was just coming out. And, I tell people that I took my cues of learning how to be a man from MTV, and that's not good. I don't wish that upon my boys. And, but then it was the guy who could drink the most and who could get the girl was the real man in my mind. And I did both of those well. During that time, I was a pretty hardcore alcoholic. I was drinking a liter of vodka every night, and then some, doing shots and stuff on top of that. And so, if you would have asked me then, I would have told you I was a good guy, and I was, out working hard, and I was doing good things, and I did everything that I believed to be right. And so, at this point in my life now, I'm doing better than I had ever done. I'm flipping houses. I'm starting to make some money. Still not a lot of money, but the most I had ever made. And but there was an emptiness to it. And as I shared with you, I didn't. It was later in life when I did come to know Jesus. At that point, when I first started investing, I didn't know him, and that's where I'd say that it was all about money. That was the whole goal. I didn't care what I had to do to make more. But then there was a point where I had gotten a phone call about that my father had just passed away. And that, hit me pretty hard, from the sense that, I just lost my father, but I wasn't really upset because I didn't know my dad. He wasn't in my life. He wasn't around. And but at the same time, I was so much like him. I looked like him. I walked like him. I talked like him. I have the same name as him. Our birthday was the same day. Everything about us was the same. And I remember when I was going to his funeral, I was just sitting there thinking, about, I'm sad because I'm never going to be able to have a relationship with him. But I didn't lose anything, because I didn't have anything with him. And I just thought of how upsetting that was. And, when I got there to his funeral, I actually looked in the casket. When I looked at him, what I saw was myself. And in that very moment, I was already a father at that time. My daughter was about 9 years old at that moment. And I realized that the thing that I said I didn't want to be, and everything that I felt my father did to me, I was doing the exact same thing to my daughter. I was being the same dad that he was. And it was the only example that I had. I was off working, trying to make money, and so that I could give her a better life. And I wasn't doing, great with that. I wasn't giving her a better life. In fact, I was absent from her life because I was just so busy working and trying to make money, thinking that the solution to being a good dad was making money. Anyway, when I saw my dad there and saw myself, in that very moment, I knew that there had to be something more to life. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where to look. I had no experience or background in the church. And as we were just moving forward, I mean, the next 2 or 3 months, I was searching. I was really searching, just thinking there's got to be something more. And life sort of just took back over and nothing happened. I went back to my old ways. I was just doing the same things that I had done in the past. And then I had another incident. I was actually driving down the interstate and had this all of a sudden rain that unlike anything I've ever seen. I'd never seen anything like it then, up till then, and haven't seen anything like it since, where it was just buckets of water that just came out of nowhere and just started coming down. Lost complete visibility, going down the interstate doing 65, 70 miles an hour. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know if I hit my brakes, the people behind me are going to hit me. If I don't hit my brakes, I'm going to hit somebody in front of me, or, whatever this was. I just remember grabbing onto the wheel, and that only lasted for a few seconds. And then all of a sudden it just cleared up, and then you could see again. We had visibility, and I saw this purple Saturn spinning around in front of me on the interstate, but I couldn't see anybody in the car. So I ended up pulling off the road real quick, and I got out and was going to go. I was running around the interstate looking for the person who was in this car. And there was another guy who pulled over also. And so he and I were both out there looking for the person that was in this car, and we couldn't find them. And I ran up to the car, and then I saw the girl in the car. And while I was there, I watched her take her last breath. And long story short, we took her out of the car and started performing CPR, and we did that for about 45 minutes before an ambulance got there, and they just told us to stop. And I remember getting back in my car and just thinking, if that was me, it could have been me. I was just seconds away from that being me. I would have had regrets about my life. I knew something again had to change. And so the search started again. But again, I didn't know where to look, and I had no idea where to go or what to do. But I just knew that there had to be more to life than what I was pursuing. And so fast forward about 6 more months, and I have my daughter with me. It's around Christmas time, and things were not going well in my life, and I was sitting here dumping some of my problems on my daughter, and just somebody to talk to. And we pull up to a stoplight. My daughter, she just looks at me and she says, "Don't worry, Daddy, just give it all over to God. He'll take care of everything." And I remember I just looked over at her and I thought, what are you talking about? This gives everything over to God. But she was my daughter, so I didn't say anything about it. And later on that day, she asked me if I would take her to church. And I wanted to make her happy, so I decided I would take her to a church. And I hadn't been in a church, and my only recollection of being in church, I think I was about 3 or 4 years old, probably for a baptism for one of my brothers. But that's my only recollection of ever being in church in my entire life. And so I'm trying to find this church, and I wanted to just find a small church that we could pop in, and I would show up a little bit after the service started, and then we'd sit in the back and we would get out of there before it was over. And but I was going to do my duty as a dad and take her to church. So mistake number one was going to a small church, because then everybody knew that we were the new people who had never been there before. And I didn't get out of that church without talking to every single person in there. And it was not a good experience for me. It didn't make me want to go back. But I had a guy who I would get together with on a regular basis. He was a real estate investor, and we were just meeting weekly to really hold one another accountable with our businesses. And I shared the story with him, and he said, Steve, he said, if it makes or means anything to you, if it makes a difference, I go to a quote unquote safe church. You won't have to worry about talking to everybody in the church, but you're welcome to come if you'd like to come. And I decided to go. I don't know why, but I did decide to go. And, I went to his church, and I actually liked it, and decided to just go back. And I went back for about 4 or 5 weeks. and got up the courage to go right up to the senior pastor and to just start telling him my story and telling him about the things I was going through in my life. And he just stopped me and he said, "I want to introduce you to somebody." He introduced me to a guy by the name of Doug. And Doug said, "Hey, man, you want to get together sometime during the week? Maybe we can grab dinner or something." And I said, "Sure." And Wednesday of that week, Doug shared the gospel with me. And I had never heard it before. But that night, I was on my knees giving my heart to Jesus. And in a moment, everything changed. I was delivered from alcohol. I was delivered from pornography. All of that just happened in an instant, right there when I sat there and received Jesus into my heart. Why I did things, all of that started changing. I started looking at my real estate investing business, and before I was doing it for the money. And I remember just saying, "God, I'm doing this for you. Whatever you want of me, I'm willing to do it." And just changed everything. It changed the way I did deals. It changed the way I interacted with people. My motives for the business completely changed. It was all about helping people rather than trying to make money. And that was on January 25th of 2000. And from that point forward, everything in my life just completely changed, and the business thrived. And I don't want to sit here and say that, hey, give your heart to Jesus and you make money. That's not. That would be very misleading if I said that. However, he can do that, and depends upon our motives and what his plans are and what he wants to do with us. But it was the beginning of what would be an incredible journey moving forward.
Man, there's so many things that I want to dive into. I don't even know where to start. Man, I took a bunch of notes down and almost kind of started crying myself because I'm thinking about my own kids and my dad. And my parents were divorced when I was age 5, and my dad moved away, and I didn't see him a whole lot. And so there's a lot there that has an impact on me as well. And I think your book is kind of one of the reasons why it made such an impact on me. I have a 6-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son, and there's a lot of times where I don't feel that David and I are doing this business for the sake of money. We really do have that passion for giving and serving and making an impact on people. And we've started to really see the fruits of our labor. But I feel myself, at least, getting caught up in it a lot. And, that drive and that hustle and, getting up at 4 a.m. and scheduling phone calls and meetings and everything after another. And recently, and it continues to happen, recently, like something hit me pretty hard. I was sitting in my office and about to get on to something. So I think it was either a podcast or a Zoom kind of call. And my son wanted just to come in and say hello. And it was like literally like 1 minute before our conversation was going to start. And I was getting logged in and getting ready. And I told him no. I said, no, Wells, I'm on a call. I'm on an important business call. And he like fell down on the ground and started crying. And it like broke my heart. And I like stopped the call. I like jumped up and like came in, grabbed him, gave him a big hug and said, "I'm sorry." And it like really hit me hard. And I was like, man, it comes back like, what am I doing all this for?
Yeah.
And so the question is, where's the line? How do you balance the hustle and the drive and building a business? And I mean, we're excited about it, but then like, where's that balance of stopping it and focusing and, changing and going towards the family? And, like it's been a challenge for me so far.
Well, it's interesting as you bring that up because, when I first got started, it was all about dominating, and I want to dominate the market, buy more houses than everybody else, beat the competition. Interestingly enough, I was reading through one of my old articles this morning that I had written, yeah, as I was going through this process, and I had written this article about quality over quantity, and focusing on doing quality deals rather than a quantity of deals, because what I discovered was that it was serving my life better. But how did I get there? I started seeing it in other people before I saw it myself. I started seeing it in the people who I was coaching, and they told me that they wanted me to help them to do well as a real estate investor so that they could live a better life. And so I'm helping them to build these businesses, and they're successfully doing everything they're being taught to do. But then their families are falling apart, their marriages are struggling, and I thought, there's something wrong with this picture. This isn't the way it's supposed to be. And that's not why they got into the business in the first place. And I really went through this wrestling for a couple of years as to whether or not I wanted to keep on teaching people how to invest in real estate, because I didn't want it to lead to that. I didn't want it to lead to broken relationships and fathers who were failing at home but doing successful in the office, and things like that. That was not where my heart's desire was. And so that wrestling, I could easily have just said, I want to stop teaching people, but there was a good side to my teaching. I think I had shared with you guys that whenever I did a real estate investing event, I would share my testimony at the events, and I would give people an invitation to accept Jesus as their savior while they're learning how to flip houses. And people were on their knees at these events accepting Jesus. And I remember this one guy one time, he just said, I came here to learn how to flip houses, and I left with something so much better. And that was happening. And so this wrestling was real. Do I stop doing that because I don't want what's going to come later, and so through that and a lot of prayer, God just shared with me, what they really want is to have an abundant life. And what you need to start teaching them is that it's not doing a lot of deals that they want. It's not making a lot of money that they want. They want the life that they believe will come from it. And so as I really was in prayer about that, it wasn't me who came up with the word Lifeonaire. It was a word that God gave to me. In fact, the first time he gave that to me in my prayers, I was saying, well, can you tell me how to spell that? And I'm trying to write this word down because
That's awesome.
I didn't know how to spell it.
Yeah.
So
I struggle with spelling too. It's okay, Steve.
Yeah. So I wrote down this word Lifeonaire, and then I think for the next few years, God was teaching me what it meant to be a Lifeonaire, and walking me through that process. So here's what I discovered, to answer your question, was so many people get into business and they have these motives, and sometimes their motives are that their stated motives are pure, their goals are pure, but most people think that the way to get to their goals is, I need to go make this kind of money. I need to make X amount of dollars a year to be generous. I need to make X amount of dollars per year to be a good father and to be a good husband, or to provide for my family. And I came to realize that if the goal is to be a good father, then I need to just do what good fathers do, not worry about the money, because whether I have a little bit of money or a lot of money, I need to do what a good father does. If I'm going to be generous, I need to be generous with what I have, whether it's little or a lot. And so I came to realize that what I needed was a vision for my life. I needed to have this clear life vision that was my guide, not how much money I made. And I couldn't put living life off, or I couldn't put being generous off, or being a good father off, until one day when I made a lot of money. My father, that day never came. Um, I look back at all the things I experienced, and there's a lot of pain that I've experienced throughout my life, and many different things that have happened. But I'm grateful for all of those, because I think God allowed me to go through all of that so that I could coach and help others, and that I can relate to so many people who and their experiences and their trials and everything that they go through, because I've been through so much of it on my in my own life. But I don't want to see people experience the things that I did. I don't want to see people do that. My dad believed, and he used to tell people all the time, I'm doing it for my boys. I'm working hard for my boys. Well, he never once asked us, what do we want? And I'll and every person who says that, they say that with a degree of purity. But if you stop for a moment and you just you ask your 5-year-old kid, do you want daddy to go to work and make more money, or do you want him to stay home and play with you? The 5-year-old kid's going to say, I'd rather you stay home and play with me. And they don't want for dad to go off and work to make more money and put off playing with them until someday. And so what I find is that most people in this American millionaire culture that we live in are striving and striving and striving in hopes of making enough money so that they can one day live life. And through Lifeonaire, we say, well, why wait? Why don't we start living life now? We can experience an abundant life today with or without the money. And as long as we put money out there as part of the goal, then we will make living life contingent upon hitting our financial goals. And so I got to try to just bring all this together. Having a life vision and a real life vision is extremely powerful. It's a hard thing for many people to put together because we don't live in a world where people teach you how to do that. That's what Lifeonaire does. We teach people actually how to develop a life vision. When people first come to me, they tell me that they do have a vision for their life, and I ask them to tell me what it is, and they tell me how much money they want to have, not what they would do with their life if they had that money. And so, but it's amazing at how many people equate life to money, especially in the real estate investing world. It's you ask people what their life vision is, they'll tell you how many rentals they want and what kind of positive cash flow they want to have, and they equate that to life. And
passive income.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the 401k and their passive income. So what Lifeonaire does is we put life first. And most people build their business first and then try to fit life into what's left over. We build life and we fit business into what's left over. And so with a life vision, we help people to design their business in such a way that it serves the lifestyle that they want to live, not take away from it.
That's incredible. There's so much depth and richness. Like, I mean, I would encourage our listeners to go back and just play that over and over again until it really sinks in deep, because it's so powerful what you've done. And then to turn that in influence, you won't know until you get to heaven how many people, there's going to be a line of people thanking you, people that read your book, people that you've talked to, people that you introduced to Christ through your, through the conferences. And it's such an exciting, like, I'm getting fired up just thinking about the ability to influence and be a thought leader and just do it through love and teach people how to live life. That is such an incredible gift that you're giving to people. I'm like tingly. It's just incredible to me how amazing and how beautiful and pure that is. And I think, what's really interesting is there's such an intentionality in it. And we talk about this a lot with our podcast, is to be so intentional by setting that vision, to be so intentional with the way that you set this thing up and the way you're doing business, that when the money does come, you know exactly what to do with it. You're already living out your goals, and maybe that's just a cherry on top, or maybe your goal is to give and it enables you to give more, whatever it is, but you've decided beforehand. And I love that. I love the concept of giving, especially giving before you have. And I just think that's awesome. And if you don't mind, you also told, I've been thinking about it since we spoke, but I think it was your pastor told you the story about influence and whether or not folks would, and this is kind of where the money part comes in. Like you had the money, but you used it in a way that was very intentional. And I think what story I'm talking about, where he asked you about influence, right? If you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, it started with here I am. I've given my heart to Christ. I'm on fire for Christ. Now all of a sudden, I'm starting to make really good money. I didn't need much money. Having come out of my failed restaurant business, my credit was shot. I couldn't buy a car on a car payment if I wanted to, so I had no debt. And I just one day sat down with my pastor and I said, I feel guilty about how much money I make. It's too much. And he said to me, he said, Steve, let me ask you a question. He said, if I were to stand in front of a group of real estate investors and I wanted to talk to them about life, would they listen to me? I said, probably not. And he said, well, if you were to stand in front of a room and you made $30,000 a year and you were to talk to them about life, would they listen to you? I said, probably not. He said, well, if you're making $30, $40, $50,000 a month, would they listen to you? I said, probably. And he said, well, there's a reason why you're making that kind of money. He said, don't forget where it came from. He said, you have a voice where I don't. And that just stuck with me. And I have never, ever forgotten that. And I just realized that I almost have a responsibility to bring a message of life to this community because, God gave me that platform and he gave me the ability to be an influence within that platform. And so many people have listened to me. When you come to somebody with a book like this one, Lifeonaire, and you try to explain what it is to them, most of them are just like, oh, I know that stuff, or I've read stuff like that before. And, you want to bring this into a real estate investor meeting. If you came to a real estate investor association, president, and you said, I want to come talk to your group about life, they'd say, nah, that's okay. We're here to make money. But because of the influence that I have had and the platform that God has given me in real estate investing, they trust me and they let me come in and talk about life. And it has impacted thousands and thousands of people, through that. So, I'm grateful for all that God has given to me in the platform. But, that conversation with my pastor that one day really made a huge difference in the direction that I decided to go with all of this.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I haven't stopped thinking about that since our conversation, because I feel that Stu and I are very driven by bottom lines when we're doing our business plans, but the bottom lines are giving bottom lines. And so we have these giving goals that we lay out. I don't even know if we talk about making goals. It's all about giving goals. And so I feel this pressure, right? But in order to give a good pressure, but in order to give that much, we have to make some money. And then with all that, being so intentional and talking to you and with the book and just our conversations, it really refocuses and hones in that entire holistic picture, right? And then of course I have things that pop in my mind, like on my accountability group today, one of my lines is put phone away for 5 to 7:30 at night, which is difficult. Stewie's 2 hours behind me when we're trying to run a business, and he's on the other side of the country. But I failed last week. I did it for 5 days. I said to do it for 5 days a week, and I failed. I think I failed every day on that one. but just having that full
nice work, dude. Nice work.
picture. Yeah, no, thank you, Stu. But I just think that the way you're so intentional with that and you're teaching people to do that is such an incredible thing. I would encourage our listeners to spend time thinking about that stuff. Don't think about the money. If you're doing the right thing and you're doing it for the right reasons, the money will come. If you have a good business plan, good mentors, and you get in contact with the Lifeonaire coaching folks and get yourself a coach, all those things are bound to the potential is there to happen. I'm just curious, did your pastor happen to mention Storehouse, David, or Stuart when he was talking about the money?
Not at that time.
Okay, awesome. Just wanted to make sure.
I think he's probably talking about you guys today.
No, but it's. I think there's such power in that, and again, just thank you so much for that influence, but driving towards action and intentionality, I think, is key.
If I could, I want to share a quick story with you guys that might just help two of you out. And I'd recently dealt with this with a student. He's a very high income earner, extremely generous. He and his wife I mean, they're giving a very substantial amount of money. And, they came to me and they were really feeling a lot of pressure and a lot of stress because they had this bottom line of what they wanted to give. And that bottom line that they did was, I came out and I asked them, I said, let me ask you a quick question. Where did that come from? Where did that number come from? They said, well, that's just what we would like to do. And I said, so, right now you're putting a whole lot of stress on yourself trying to hit that number. I said, did you ever ask God what he wanted you to give? And I said, instead of putting this high percentage of what you make out there, why don't you just say that I'm willing to radically be obedient to whatever it is that the Holy Spirit asks me to do, instead of coming up with some number that puts pressure on you. And so at any given moment, and I shared with them stories that, there's times I'd be in church and there's an opportunity to give, and I would just, pray and say, Lord, what do you want me to do here? What do you, and whatever number or something comes to my mind is what I do. And, I remember one time being in church and just praying, Lord, what do you want me to give? And the answer was everything. And I sat there in that moment. I thought, okay, so God,
That's scary.
What do you mean by everything?
Yeah.
And in that moment it was, and I felt God just say, everything that you have on you right now, give it. And I had, I think it was like $1,700 in my wallet. And I just said, okay. And, afterwards we're supposed to go out to dinner, and I had to pay with credit cards and stuff like that. But it was so freeing to just say, Lord, whatever you want, and to be able to do it. So I had encouraged that with this one couple, because I'm just trying to tie this together. You were asking, why do you feel driven? Well, there's a bottom line that's driving you. And if that bottom line was maybe driven more by God, and just pray yourselves, where did that number come from? Is that a number that we're trying to strive for, or is that what God is asking us to do? And not saying that there's a right or wrong answer. The right answer is, seeking out God and asking him. And that's what I try to help people with oftentimes with my coaching. But it took so much pressure off of this couple. And they've probably been giving more.
Yeah. Wow.
But the pressure of a number that they were chasing, that created a lot of stress for them. And otherwise life would be easy for them. But they created a number that was just a percentage of everything that they brought in, and they were trying to figure out how to do it. So anyway, I just wanted to share that quick story with you guys.
That's awesome.
Good stuff. Yeah, we David at the beginning of the year kind of comes up with that, that we came up with a number, right? And we both kind of felt the calling to just give it all up front. So like last January, we were like, you know what? Instead of doing 10% per deal per transaction, we're just going to do it all up front and make it hurt. And we did. But I think going that route of not having a number and just going with what he really tells us to go with.
And it didn't hurt, right? Like, I mean, there were direct things that we saw, like we never correlated it. Like, well, if we didn't give that, we'd have money for this deal. We never correlated that, of course, because you give, you give from your heart. But it was interesting how there were continuous blessings through that as well. Like there was never a deal that we didn't get. We just may have had to be a little more creative or do whatever it was that we had to do.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's been incredible. And I'm actually hesitant we haven't talked about January 1st this year. We haven't talked about it yet because it's, call it a faith thing, or I don't know. We just haven't talked about it yet, but I'm excited to do it because it's awesome. It's like an expression of your faith, and you're like, all right, God, here you go. It's yours anyways. So
He loves it.
Whatever.
Loves the obedient heart.
Yeah.
Well, I know we're going to run short on time because you have a hard time because of your family, which is awesome. But just real fast, tell us just kind of a brief overview of what the book is truly about, for those that haven't read it yet.
Well, unlike a lot of business books, it is a business allegory. It is a story.
Yeah.
And I spent 9 years writing the book. And, the first maybe 8 years of that, I was trying to write it as a nonfiction book and get all the principles and everything in there that I wanted to teach. But I felt like it was the kind of book that people would read a quarter of it or a third of it, get their aha and put the book down and not finish it. And I wanted them to finish it. I wanted them to get the whole picture, not just take a few nuggets and then take it and run. And so I decided to write it as a fictional story that incorporated all the principles and do it in such a way that it was gripping, where people wanted to get to the end of the book. They wanted to finish it. And that way I could teach all of the principles and not just a few of them. And so what we find is that many people tell us it's one of the first books that they've ever read cover to cover. They tell us that they couldn't put the book down. They tell us, and this I hear from just about everybody, I see myself in the story. And I could really relate to it because that was my life.
Yep.
And so it is just a collection of my own personal stories, as well as all the people I've worked with and coached, and just put into some characters, and really teaches, what it means to live an abundant life, and helps to give direction of what we're doing with our businesses and our careers, and how do we use them to live and experience the life that we want to live, and not become a slave to the businesses or our lifestyles and things.
Well, I know Stu is also super grateful that it's kind of story version and not super complex words, because that really helped him to read it and digest it. And
the picture version's coming out soon.
Yes.
It'd be perfect. It'd be perfect.
Better. You're pretty funny.
That's awesome.
So so let's say, a guy like David decides to read this book and wants to, implement some of these strategies. And, we've been both just going hard at creating this business. Where do you even start? Where do you go from reading a book and having this big aha moment to really trying to change your life and make it abundant?
So for me, one of the things that I had to do, even I'm the guy who was creating all this and originating it, but I had to surround myself with other people who were doing it too. And I had a hard time finding those people. And the reality is that's when I started my coaching program, was so that I could surround myself with other people who were pursuing it. And there was a degree of accountability. If I'm going to teach you how to do it, I have to do it too. But today there's a whole community of Lifeonaires all across the country. And, we've impacted thousands and thousands of people. And, you had said earlier, Dave, that, one day I'm going to hear about people who just come to me. I'm blown away that people who are 4 or 5 layers down from me, I get letters from them telling me that, you impacted this person, who impacted this person, who told my dad about it. And now here's where I'm at. And it's pretty awesome to hear those kinds of things. But you need to get around other people. And so one of the things, 2 things. One, get into, the Lifeonaire app, into our community. Surround yourself with other like-minded people. They're an extremely generous community from the perspective of, hey, we'll walk with you through this. We'll teach you, what we've done. And, and we're still on the journey ourselves, and let's do it together. And, we'll help you. And the other thing is, sit down and write a vision. And if, we provide tools to be able to do that for people who can't do that on their own. We also do events. They're 3-day-long events that we bring people out of their day-to-day environment and just get them in a room where they're focused just on themselves and their lives. And the goal is for them to walk out of there in 3 days with a Lifeonaire vision that will guide them and help them to make their decisions as they move forward in both life and business. And so making the right business decisions to help you live and experience the life that you want to live. And so it's a very, very powerful thing, but it's a very methodical process that we take people through to help make that happen.
Yeah, incredible, Steve. Really appreciate it. And I think, we'll put the links and whatnot to the site and the apps in our show notes. And I really selfishly want to keep this going for another 45 minutes, but I want to absolutely honor your time, and I don't think you'd probably just cut it off anyways, because I know you're dedicated to those kids. And
let me just
it.
put this out there. I would love to do it again. There's so many more things that we could talk about, and
Well, I was just thinking that we're gonna have a part two, because we absolutely want to have you back on, and I think that this is real life, right? The business can be amazing. Storehouse could grow to be this incredible thing, and our kids could have zero interest and nobody has interest in it, and it dies with us, right? That's the stuff that doesn't really, businesses come and go, but this impact, this influence, living a life of meaning, that's where it's at, and that's where the happiness and not even the happiness, the joy of life, I think comes in. And so if you could tell us just how people can reach out and contact you or your team, or potentially, seek coaching, that'd be awesome as well. We'll add that to the show notes.
Well, lifeonaire.com is the central place that you can get into our app. From there, you can contact us about anything else from there. But lifeonaire.com, you can get the book in any bookstore, Amazon. You can order it from Barnes and Noble. I don't know, we don't do much promotion of it, but this last month we had record sales of the book, and I've never done marketing of it, and it just continues to keep on going up. But it's all word of mouth. And I woke up one day and I was like, what happened? Why? The last 3 months has been going up, but last month was just incredibly high. I mean, we probably tripled our sales and from what we were doing earlier in the year, and that had steadily been climbing. So the word's getting out there. It's making a difference.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. It's been a really, really true pleasure to have you on, and you have truly made an impact to us, and we thank you for that. And I know that you're going to have an impact just on our listeners and alone.
Well, thank you, and it was my pleasure. I appreciate you guys having me and giving me an opportunity just to share the message, and love to come back and do more.
Sounds good. All right. Well, you heard it. Go get the book. Go check out his website. Look into some coaching. And most importantly, go fill your storehouse.
Make it a great day.
See ya.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.